Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi alladhi nawwara qulub al-arifina bi nuri ma'rifatih wa athbata fu'ada anbiya'ihi wa awliya'ihi bi qasas al-anbiya'i wal mursalin wa akmala iman al-muslimina wal mu'minin bi wilayati aliyyin namir al-mu'minina alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أفضل الموجودات العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد المصطفى الممجد المحمود الأحمد أعني أبا القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى روحه ونفسه وسهره ووسيه سيد الأتقياء والأصفياء مولى الموالي إمام المتقين علي بن أبي طالب.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى أصفيائه لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وروحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال صاحب الزمان عليه الصلاة والسلام
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وأما من كان من الفقهاء صائلا لنفسه حافظا لدينه مخالفا لهواه مطيعا لأمر مولاه فللعوام أن يقلدوه. صلاة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Last week we talked about ijtihad and this week we will talk about taqleed. Ijtihad itself, the definition we gave last week of taqleed, literally it means to follow someone. In fact, qalada is the right word in Arabic from which from, and that means chains. To put the chain of your action in the neck of another person, meaning give him the responsibility that I will practice according to your understanding and you have the responsibility of my action. And many words have become terminologies and they do not only have just one meaning, they don't have just a literal meaning, they have a terminological meaning. And as a terminology, taqleed is to follow an expert, a qualified mujtahid or an expert in all matters of wajibat, obligations, muharramat, in the things which are forbidden, all the recommendations and all the discouragements. And that's what's called taqleed in terminology. Today we would like to talk about some of the proofs on the word taqleed. We have given you a verse from Surah Tawbah that also indicates upon ijtihad. And if ijtihad is a wajib kifai, if we all remember wajib taqleed and wajib kifai from last week, an obligation of choice is wajib taqleed and wajib kifai is an obligation that if some people fulfill it, then others do not have to fulfill it. Ijtihad is an obligation which is wajib kifai, but taqleed is not wajib kifai. Taqleed is you are not a mujtahid and you cannot do ihtiyat if you cannot follow precaution. Even after studying many years, many people do not become mujtahideen, they do not become experts, they do not qualify. So what do? They sometimes learn so much so that they can follow precaution. If you remember last week we gave you examples what are the places where you do precaution. If you remember the example of qasr and tamam, we said where do you do the shorter prayers and where do you do the full prayers? Does everyone remember that? No one got it right. Yes? Even places of ihtiyat are not commonly known by all people. And the higher you go, the more you go, the deeper you go in the Shia jurisprudence, the more difficult it becomes to follow precaution. And many times it is not feasible for many people. A person, for example, like myself, who is living in a country where it is very difficult to follow precaution, I try to follow precaution some time back, and I had to come back to Taqleed. It was easier, much easier to do Taqleed, to follow a mujtahid, an expert, than to follow precaution. It becomes very difficult because of the traveling and because of so many things and the interactions that we have. So it is better to just follow an expert. The biggest proof for Taqleed itself is intellect and is logic. Why? Because in our daily life, we always refer to experts. No one says that, I have some pain in my hand, so I'm going to cut my hand open and see what's inside. You always refer to an expert, a medical expert. And you ask them, I have pain, I have severe pain in my hand. What do you think it is? And they will probably say, okay, this is what's wrong, this is a medicine, this is what you need to do. And you follow them. Do you understand what they say? Do you understand the medicine? Do you know the medicine? No. And many times they may even differ with each other. I have gone through serious health problems some years back, and the doctors had different opinions on what should I do. In fact, when I had decided to go for the surgery, there was a doctor who just was passing by and said, you seem like a very young person. What are you in for in the surgical ward? I said, I'm waiting for a surgery. He said, don't you think you should get a second opinion? Even though he was himself a doctor and he knew that his colleagues were seeing me, some experts were seeing me, I had, best consultants, but even then they wanted a second opinion because mistakes can be made. They're not infallible. The fuqaha are not infallible. Infallibles are only the imams, okay? So the ayatullahs are not infallible, they may make mistakes. But what do? Do you think because they may make mistakes, we will not follow them? Do you do that with the doctors? No. We never do that with the doctors. Logic says, when you don't know, then refer to the ones who do know. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. This verse is only revealed for the infallible imams, the Holy Prophet's progeny. Ask those who know if you do not know. Yes? فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And it also applies for Taqleed. If you don't know, then you follow an expert. Making a house, you need an engineer. Yes? You need an architect. You need some laborers. Even though they may not be, they may not go through qualification, but because they are skilled and you are not, you cannot just start saying, okay, I'll get the bricks, I'll get the sand, I'll get the cement, I'll get the things that I needed, and let's start making the house. You always refer to experts. So the logical basis, I'll give you a few of the verses from the Holy Quran. I've given you already two verses. One from Surah Tawbah, verse number 122, and and the other one is ayah فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ, very famous ayah. I think it is in Surah Dariyat, but I'm not sure at the moment. So another verse from the Holy Quran, those who know, meaning refer to the experts. Now, the other proof that I want to give you is the two ahadith, famous ahadith. One that I chose, it is more famous than it is from the 11th Imam al-Islam, and I said it is from the 12th Imam al-Islam. The famous hadith is from Al-Ihtijaj of Tabarsi, which goes back 700-800 years ago, and the hadith, it says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْفُقَهَاءِ سَائِلًا لِنَفْسِهِ حَافِظًا لِدِينِهِ مُخَالِفًا لِهَوَاهُ مُطِيعًا لِأَمْرِ مَوْلَى فَلِلْأَوَامِ أَنْ يُقَلِّدُوهُ. The word taqleed has been used here. Okay? The Imam from the 11th Imam says that as for the fuqaha, now anyone who is an expert in fiqh, and that's why we call the ayatullahs faqih or fuqaha, an expert in fiqh or jurisprudence. As for the jurists, the translation in English, as for the jurists, man kana, min al-fuqaha sa'ilan li nafsihi, who protects himself, his own desires, he protects his nafs. Sa'ilan li nafsihi, hafizan li dinihi, he protects his religion. Mukhalifan li hawahu, he goes against his evil desires. He is not a worldly person, and that's why Khomeini is given a fatwa that you should not follow an ayatollah who becomes a worldly. Oh, I'll have many followers, I'll have a lot of khums coming in, and I'll have 2 million people following me. That kind of an ayatollah should not be followed because he's become a worldly person. He doesn't want the hereafter. He doesn't want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he wants this world. And religion is to take you out of the dunya, this world, and the worldly things, pride, greed, jealousy, all of these things, and it should take you towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you should it should take you and it should refer you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, mukhalifan li hawahu, he should go against his evil desires. Muti'an li amri mawla, and should be obedient to the will of his mawla, his master. And who's the master? The biggest master is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Holy Prophet, and then Imam alayhi salam. All 12. All 12 are our mawlas. Okay, everyone? In the 12, the first one is Imam alayhi salam, and obviously the last one is the 12th Imam alayhi salam. So muti'an li amri mawlahu, he is obedient the will of our Imam. He is obedient to the will of the master. Falil awami, then upon the people, upon the awam, meaning the common people, upon the laymen, an yuqalliduhu, to follow them, to imitate them. An yuqalliduhu, to follow as they do. To follow them in everything they command. However, the difference between the infallible and the fuqaha is that every word, that the infallibles say, and every action that they perform, and every approval becomes sunnah, a practice that we can take. But the fuqaha, only their words, when they give as a fatwa, becomes means of, that you follow and imitate. Not their actions and all words, because they are not infallible. Okay, any statement they give as a fatwa. Now, taqleed, according to this hadith, is wajib. This is by the 11th Imam. So the 11th and the 12th Imam are preparing you for the oncoming times, because the times will be difficult. Many of the ulama say that the hadith, this is not complete hadith, because in Ihtajaj al-Tabarsi, the book that I have referred to, he says, and not all fuqaha will have these conditions. So you should try and look for the faqih or the mujtahid who has these conditions. The one who has all of these conditions, he should be followed. Now, when you refer to Tawdil Masail, yes, the law of any mujtahid, what they would say is, they would mention a little bit more conditions. Where do they get those conditions from? For example, they would say you should be a man, legitimate of birth, for example, should be sane, many more conditions. Altogether 8 or 9 conditions. They would get those conditions from other ahadith that refer to the conditions of a qadi, a jurist, or a judge in Islamic court. In Islamic court, a man, yes, sane, has to be an adult. We only have one mujtahid. Some say 3 mujtahideen who became mujtahid before they became an adult. In an Islamic law, 14-year-old is an adult, not 16 or 18. Okay? So we only had in the history 3 people who became mujtahid even before they became adults. They were genius. And you don't have, geniuses who were born every day. But someone like Allama Hilli, who was not even baligh, the day he became baligh, the day he became an adult, he was giving sweets to everyone in the Haram of Imam Ali in Najaf. And people asked him, why are you distributing sweets? He said, because today Allah has taught me to be eligible, that I do everything as an obligation. Many people think, from today, everything has become an obligation on me. Don't think of it as a burden, think of it as a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, it's a gift that Allah has given me the obligation as a gift today, and that's why I'm distributing sweets, and I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. In the recent years, we've had someone like Shaheed Muhammad Baqir Sadr, who became a mujtahid according to the Lakhoui at the age of 16. The Lakhoui was very difficult to give, ijazat of ijtihad, and he gave him the full ijazat of ijtihad when he was about 16 or 17. His uncle said to him, 17 when another Lakhoui gave him the ijazat, and his uncle, Sayyid Murtaza Ali Yasin, was his maternal uncle, his mother's brother. was also an ayatullah. He said, upon you Taqleed is haram, and he was only 16. He said, I know that. He said, how do you know? He said, ever since I've become an adult, I have not followed another mujtahid. Meaning he himself knew that he was a mujtahid. His older brother Sayyid Ismail Sadr, when he asked him, he was teaching him in Qadimain, he said, I was teaching him the first book of Usul al-Fiqh when he was only 11. And you know that book is taught in the third year usually. It's the first book on the principles of jurisprudence, Ma'alimu Usul, by Shahid Thani, Shahid Thani's son. So he said, I was teaching him that book. He said, but I have a question. So his older brother says that he's only 11. What kind of a question could he have? He said, just pay attention and learn. What questions do you have? He said, if you're going to be teaching me this book, teach me properly. Otherwise, don't teach me. He said, okay, let's see what's your question. So he said, he gave me the same question on Ma'alim al-Usul, the first book, which Kifayatul Usul, which is the last book, which is taught in the 9th year. He said, he gave me the question that the 9th year book has on the 3rd year book, that these are the things which are wrong in here. He said, I was thinking, has he gone on to read that book and come back and ask me that question? That he's cheated, but at the age of 11, can you already understand the books of the 9th year? So he's well ahead of his age. And if he hasn't cheated, and he hasn't read that book, then can he think like the writer of the 9th year book? Then he said, I realized when he was only 11 that this boy is a genius. So he said, at the age of 13, I brought him to Najaf. And when he came to Najaf, he said, I understand all the books and I would like to attend the Dars al-Kharij, the final stage, the PhD level of At-Talaqui. At the age of 13, he was attending. So his brother said, I attend At-Talaqqi's lectures, how can you understand them? He said, let's go together and we'll find out if I understand them or not. So he said, he went with me, and you can have geniuses like that. From the age of 13, he was attending the highest level. This is, these are gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even after going through those books for years, he said, when I became 25, he said, I wrote down all the questions. A genius, he said, I went to At-Talaqi and I said, I have these questions on your fatwa. He said, bring them on. He said, he was sitting on the pulpit, and when he finished his lecture, so I said, this is my first question. So he answered it. I said, well, I have another answer to that. Shaykh Bakr says. So he answered At-Talaqi. At-Talaqi said, but I have an answer for your answer. So he gave him another answer. He said, we continued for half an hour. Each time he would give an answer, I gave him an answer. And each time I would give an answer, he gave me an answer. He said, that's how learned At-Talaqi was. Can you imagine how much time they spend? Half a century before a mujtahid becomes a mujtahid, an expert becomes an expert. And that's why it is an obligation to follow the expert. Because you do not ever become a full expert. You may learn the verses and ahadith, but you don't become an expert to be able to derive the rulings from those verses and from those ahadith yourself. I was recently speaking to one of my, I shouldn't say friend, but he's a close friend, but he's a very learned person. He's a very senior student in the Hawza. He's probably a mujtahid himself. So I asked him, are you a mujtahid? He said, probably not. I said, you've been attending the Kharij for 18 years, so you must be. And he is. I'm sure that he is, but he was putting himself down. I said, how would you say that a person can be referred as a mujtahid? He said, well, he should go to one of the biggest experts, mujtahideen, and he should take one hadith. He says, okay. He will put one hadith in front of him. He said, okay, now tell me what do you think of this hadith. And the expert will be able to judge if this person is a mujtahid or not. Just by one hadith, to judge if this person is a mujtahid or not. Just by one hadith, they can tell if you are an expert or if you are not an expert. Can you imagine? Just by one hadith, because they will look how strong you are in deriving that ruling. Excuse me. And when you go to the biggest of the doctors, these days I have found that they do not diagnose you, your illness very quickly. A good expert would say, this is what's wrong with you. Diagnosis of an illness, and then what is the solution, what is the cure for that illness? That is a medical science. Okay? A mujtahid's job is to diagnose the problem and then give the fatwa, this is a solution. To be able to derive those rulings, this is called an expert. And to follow the mujtahid in all of this is called taqleed. We refer in all those things without even thinking, but because people put doubts in your mind, you always have questions about following an expert. Can you all pay attention to this point, please? You know, if any one of us was asked about a person, if he's a doctor or not, or if he's a good doctor or not, or how good a doctor is he compared to another doctor, we'll also say, well, I'm not qualified to answer, you know. But if we were all asked about a mujtahid, an expert, we would all very easily give a statement, as if we were experts and we understood how learned they were, as if we understand the Quran and Hadith from their dimension as well as they do. So and so Maulana is not that learned, but he is very learned. So I was asking, and you know, one of the speakers, I said, how do you know so and so speaker is very learned? He said, he speaks well. I said, that's oratory. He is not even qualified, that person. He hasn't even seen the face of the religious institutes. But because a person speaks well, they would be able to give a judgment that he is an expert on Quran and Hadith. This is so illogical and against wisdom that we would easily pass a judgment and say that so and so person is very qualified. Taqleed itself means that we submit to the will of a mujtahid that who understands the Quran and Hadith as the Imams have tried to make us understand Quran and Hadith, not as we understand them. We may look at a verse and we think that this is my understanding. You cannot give your personal understanding. Let's look at it. You know, many people took things literally. I'll give you two examples very quickly and go into one other hadith. In the time of the Holy Prophet, you know, the verse in the Holy Quran came down in Surah Baqarah. كُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ خَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ. Keep eating and drinking, you know, before you start your fast. You can eat during the night, but you can't during the day. From dawn till dusk, you have to abstain. Fasting is basically to abstain. You cannot eat, drink, and do so many things while you are fasting. So you have to abstain. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, keep eating and drinking until حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَسْوَدُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَبْيَضِ. So long as the white thread does not appear from the black thread. So many of the Sahaba, many of the companions of the Holy Prophet, they took two threads, a black thread and a white thread, and they put them together on top of each other, and they kept eating and drinking. They took it literally. That is two threads. So the Holy Prophet said, what are you doing? It is dawn now, you're supposed to stop eating. They said, Ya Rasulullah, but you said, so long as the black thread is not seen, and there was no light in those days. He said, that's not what's meant. He said, what does it mean then? He said, the black line from the white line, as soon as on the horizon of the earth, the first white line that appears, that is a sign that the dawn has started before the sunrise. An hour and a half, approximately an hour and 40 minutes before the sunrise, there is a white line on the surface of the earth. He said, so long as the white line doesn't appear on the black surface, that's what's meant. They all knew Arabic and they all took it so literally. Can you imagine? And there are many other verses. I wanted to go to two other verses, and there are still disputes between different schools of thought because many of the people have taken things literally. They have not referred to the Holy Prophet and his holy progeny for the explanation. When the people came to the Imam alayhi salam, especially Imam alayhi salam, he gave explanations and he said, that's not what's meant. You have to look deep into those verses. Kitab al-Tawheed I've translated into English. I can't remember what chapter. And there are 67 chapters in it. And one of the chapters, a person comes to Imam alayhi salam, he says, Maulana, there is contradiction in the Holy Quran. He said, I'll read you some verses. So he started reading. He said, no, that's what's meant by these verses. It's a 40 pages long chapter. That person brings something like 20, 30 different verses to show contradiction. And until and unless you look at the answer of the Imam alayhi salam, That's when you feel that, oh, that's how you're supposed to put the two verses together. The explanation of the Holy Prophet and the Imam is very important. The second hadith is by the 12th Imam, Imam Zaman alayhi salatu wasalam. The Imam al-Islam says, and this is in Al-Ihtajaj al-Tabarsi again, and also in Bihar al-Anwar of Allama Muhammad Baqir Majlisi, and also in Masail al-Shia of Shaykh Khurri Amili. There are many other references, I'm sure, but I only recall these three at the moment. This is called Taqleed Mubarak. Taqleed is anything which is in the handwriting of the 12th Imam or with the stamp or the signature of the 12th Imam. Taqleed is basically signature in Arabic, or the stamp. So anything which is in the handwriting of the 12th Imam is called the Taqleed Mubarak, or the holy handwriting, meaning the 12th Imam's handwriting. How did we get these things in the writing of the 12th Imam? During what age? What period do you think?
Minor occultation.
Minor occultation. Okay, during Ghaibat al-Sughra, the minor occultation, the four people were appointed. People would say, this is my question, take it to the Imam. They would take it to the Imam, Imam would write the answer on it. Or he would say, okay, you write the answer, and he would just sign it and say, take it to the people and tell them this is my answer. The final, Muhammad ibn, Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samari, from Samarra, or Samri, if it is Samra. If it is not, it's not Samra, it is Samarra. Basically, it was taken from Surra Marra'a. It pleased anyone who saw it. It was a beautiful thing, that's why it's called Surra Marra'a. And from Surra Marra'a, it became Samarra. And maybe, anyway. So he was from Samarra, and that's why it's called Samari. He was the final deputy of the Prophet Imam. And the Imam said to him that tell the people, and he gave it in writing, this is what وَأَمَّا فِي الْحَوَادِثِ الْوَاقِعَةِ فَارْجِعُوا فِيهَا إِلَىٰ رُوَاةِ أَحَادِيثِنَا فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ. As for the times to come, they will be very difficult times, referred to. And that's why we say Marja Taqleed. Marja is called someone who you refer to, the one who is referred to in Taqleed. Imam says in this hadith, Farji'u. We use the word Taqleed because of the 11th Imam's hadith. He's used the word Taqleed there. فَلِلْعَوَامِ أَن يُقَلِّدُوهُ. He's used the word Taqleed. And here we call them Marja Taqleed because of this hadith. Farji'u, do ruju to, refer to. Farji'u fiha, in these difficult times, ruwati hadithina, ila ruwati hadithina, to the experts in our traditions, the ones who are experts in our hadith, fuqaha, the mujtahideen, the experts. فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ, as because they are my hujjat, my proof over you. The Imam al-Islam says. وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ, and I am the proof of Allah over them. Imam is Hujjatullah, and they are the Hujjat of the Imam al-Islam. And that's why we call them Hujjat al-Islam. These days, actually, everyone's become Hujjat al-Islam, unfortunately. Everyone, Maulana, they would just say Hujjat al-Islam al-Muslimin. But anyway, it's a big title. So, their Imam says that they are my proof over you, and I am the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them. Imam is the proof of Allah, and they are proofs of the Imam. Ar-raddu alayhim kar-raddi alayna. The one who rejects them has rejected us, not me. The Imam al-Islam says they have rejected us. Ar-raddu alayhim kar-raddi alayna. War-raddi alayna kar-raddi alayna. The one who rejects us, the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam, has rejected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kar-raddi alayna. Wa huwa bihaddi shirk. And that is like infidelity or disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To reject the Almighty God. To reject the whole message. These are the words of the Prophet of Islam. Why? Brothers, I want you to pay attention. I know, that they'll be elected by another guest after me. But I want you to all pay attention to this one thing. Why does the Imam emphasize so much so that he says that if you do not take the teachings from them, you have rejected us, you have rejected Islam, you have rejected everything. Why? If you do not take your Islam from the experts, the ones who have endowed, their whole life is spent in learning Islam and teaching Islam. If you do not take your Islam from them, who will you take your Islam from? From the White House?
Yes.
You will exactly take your Islam from, who would you take it from? Which experts will you take it from?
They want us to today anyway.
You know, that the whole Islam will go down the drain because the whole Islam will be taken by people who are not even learned in Islam. And when Ayatollah Khomeini had said, today people who do not even know how to write Islam properly in Arabic, they tell you what Islam is, what true Islam is. You know, this is what Islam is. They would tell you what Islam is. Islam is not, you know, the pure Islam. And then you get people who, you know, you get people who give a bad name to Islam because they have been implanted. I was invited to, you know, the Clapham and Stockwell Interfaith Forum, and just after 9/11 in the past few years, and I said to them, how many percent do you think? How many percent of the Muslims do you think are Taliban or, you know, the Al-Qaeda and everyone? Yeah, we don't know. It seemed like everywhere. I said there are 1.5 billion Muslims. Even if there were 1%, do you know how many people would be Al-Qaeda and Taliban?
15 million.
Can you imagine? That'll be 15 million. Do you think even 0.1% people are Taliban and Al-Qaeda? And when I told them that, you know, it wasn't even a fraction of a percentage, they were all surprised. They said, how could that be? But the media makes them so big. That's the whole point. Do they want this Islam to go on the media? Never. Who would you always see, you know, representing the Muslims on the media, on BBC especially, and on ITV and Channel 4?
George Ahmadi.
Someone like Umar al-Bakri.
He was my hero.
You know Umar al-Bakri?
Yeah.
The guy has been deported now. But they would always say, look at this Islam, look at, you know, and he's how many Muslims followed him in this country? He's a Sunni Muslim, fine, I'm a Shia. Majority of the Sunnis do not even accept him. And Umar al-Bakri was referred to as a representative of the Muslim. Or, what's his name? Hamza? What's his name? Abu Hamza. You know, a person with one eye, with a hook, looks like not the cartoons that the people had. You know? But in the cartoons you would always, you know, the pirate. I don't want to say it, I don't want to promote it. You know? Someone who is a villain in the cartoons seen by all children, so it was a that you've been waiting for. This is the Muslim that they want to see. They wouldn't ever have someone decent and who has good views. People who do not have more than 500, 600 following in this country, they are representatives of Islam. That's what the media wants people to see. So if they attack Iraq, they say, okay, if these are the Muslims, attack them, kill them. If these are the Muslims in Palestine, kill them. No one is going to speak. And many times, the biggest problem is that, you know, like the propaganda machine and the media itself is so strong and powerful, it can convince anyone easily. And you would believe it so much so, because you see, they don't have much interaction with the Muslims, so they would say, this is Islam. This is true Islam. And if you told them anything different, they said, no, but the BBC didn't say that. Tell lies so many times so that everyone starts accepting it. You know, they say that if you keep repeating the lie, it becomes the truth. That's what CNN and BBC do. Say it so many times, it becomes the truth. The biggest propaganda machine, you know, today, media and the whole digital media itself and the press media. If they want to demonize someone and you know, they would pick out the worst example and make that example to be a common practice. That's what common Islam. You would refer to many of the Muslim youth today who would see someone like Abdullah Sistani in Najaf, who has spent From the age of 19, he's been in Najaf, and he is 79 now. How many years has he been in Najaf, anyone? 60 years in Najaf. 2 years in Qom, and before that, few years in Mashhad. So from the age of 13, probably 15, he has been in education. More than 60 years he spent in institutes. And you would have sometimes, well, the media doesn't portray him, so, sometimes, as an evil. But you will have sometimes even our own Shia who would see him as an enemy. The one who has given the most today for Islam, 60 something years, most of us, we are not even willing to give 1 or 2 years for Islam, to learn. And a person who spends 60 something years learning, and the obligation that would, if he didn't fulfill it, we will all be sinful. Just like the burial of a deceased. If some people don't do it, then we're all sinful. We can't leave a body, dead body, lying outside. Yes? We said it's wajib kifaya, so some people have to do it. But we never thank them that, oh, these people have, we never appreciate the few good people. I didn't want to go too much into it, but here, one example. One of my teachers, he made a black mark on a white paper. A big white paper, he made a black mark, and he said, what's this? Everyone, what's this? And we all said, black mark, black mark. He said, I'm surprised. There's a small black mark on it. It's a white sheet. It's a white paper. We're all, what is the quality of a fly? Flies? We don't have many in this country. Go to Pakistan, India, and they don't, the people who haven't seen, they will. What is the quality of a fly? Because you don't see them in this country, I'll tell you, and try this. They always sit down on the worst point, on the dirt, on anything which is unclean, a wound, something, They wouldn't sit anywhere on clean. They would pick out the worst spot or something like that, on something which is bleeding or a wound, that's where they come and sit. Everyone paying attention? Many people are like flies. They have the qualities of flies. What they do is, they pick out the worst point. They ignore all the good, they pick out. How many people have? Shouldn't we like animals? Those qualities that the animal possess. When you say clean yourself, meaning take out the animalistic habits from yourself. Many good habits are found in animals. Pick those out. Many animals have many good qualities. And the Imams have counted. For example, a rooster had 5 good qualities. He always gets up at the time of prayer. Always up at Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, always making the sound. Yes, he calls for prayer. At all prayers. He always is awake at the times of prayer. We should at least learn that little thing from him. As soon as it finds something to eat, some seeds, it will make so much noise, call all the chicken and come and eat with me. I've found something. Sacrificing. There are 5 good qualities mentioned in the hadith. I'm not going to go into it. Pick out good things from everyone. Don't pick out bad qualities and pick them and then adopt them. Qualities and pick them and then adopt them. Taqleed is one of the greatest lessons from the Ayman of Islam. They said, do not, towards the end of the time, our own people will become enemies, and what they will do is, they will say, no, don't follow the experts, follow the ignorant. Every verse in the Holy Quran that refers to the referral of a lay person to an expert refers to Taqleed. Every verse, please brothers, this is the last point, and I can let you ask questions. I've said too much. 40 minutes. Every verse in the Holy Quran that refers to a common person referring to an expert refers to Taqleed. Taqleed is us following an expert. We always do Taqleed in many things, but as soon as it comes to religion, doing Taqleed becomes a bit of a problem. Because we should all become experts in religion. Even if you are not, then, well, we should try and use our brain. Why should we follow someone else? You should try and use your brain, and that's why you follow an expert. Many things go without saying. Why doesn't it say before every verse, do ijtihad or taqleed? Some things go without saying. It doesn't say, for example, the medical book doesn't say this book is for medical students. You don't pick it up and say, I'm reading it, I can follow it. It says cut from, if you, for example, find some cancer in the hand, cut from this place to this place, 3 inches, I'm going to cut myself and see what I can do myself. You never do that. It says in the medical book, follow it. But no one does. Yes, it's a manual, but for experts in medical field. And there are many, many books. If you want to refer, go and refer to those books and you'll find out how deep the process of ijtihad is. And that's why you need to follow. Even after a study of 15, 16 years, I still am a muqallid. 16 years I have been a student and teacher. And I still do taqleed because I have not become a mujtahid or an expert in Raza. Not because I was done, because I left. It would have taken me at least another 15 years, probably 10, 15 years. It's not easy, the process. So the process is long, and you should continue to refer to an expert so long as you are not an expert yourself. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Almost every person in this room is a very young person, and the salawat was as if you're all either tired or very elderly.
I think it's sharp now.
We'll take questions. We've got plenty of people here today, so hopefully lots of questions. Who would like to go first? Hands up, please.
There's 1 or 2 in the back.
Please, Rob Campbell.
We always have. You're only allowed to ask one.
Yeah, one question, please, per person, and then if we've got time at the end, we'll take a second each.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Last week you mentioned that Shia Islam do not believe in the qiyas analogy.
Yes, analogy.
Okay. And obviously it's frowned upon, yeah? If you do not have hadith or a Quranic verse to a modern day problem, what are the Majaz using?
Ahsan. If you do not find a verse in the Holy Quran on a topic, you don't find a hadith on a topic, how do you derive a ruling if you do not have qiyas? Qiyas is a very weak method, even according to logic. There are 2 methods in logic. Everyone following me? Yeah. I'm going to be too technical, and forgive me for it. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible, that every single person should understand it. There is a direct method of deriving a ruling, and there is an indirect, according to logic. Okay? Logic is common in Muslims, non-Muslims, Christians, Jews, everyone. I've got all the books that I taught in the bachelor's course here in the universities, and I've taught at bachelor's level logic. Direct method and indirect method. Indirect method has 3 ways, and direct method has 3 ways of deriving a ruling. Indirect, for example, like contradiction. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to go into all of that. Contradiction. You say soul or spirit, ruh, is present. If you can't prove this, you make a contradictory statement. What would be the contradiction of? The spirit is present, the spirit is not present. If you prove this to be wrong, then the contradiction will be proven right. Okay, everyone? Everyone followed it? Inshallah. Now this is indirect method. There are 3 indirect methods. There are 3 direct methods. The first direct method is induction. Then there is deduction. Deduction first, then induction, and then analogy. So analogy is the lowest and the weakest form of. I'll give you one example of induction. You say if all the animals and the mammals, when they are chewing their food, the bottom jaw moves and not the top jaw. So you see the human beings. The bottom jaw is moving when we chew the food, but not the top. Yes, everyone? Yes. You look at a cow, does the same. You look at other animals, sheep, horses, donkeys, elephants, everyone, yes, it's true. So you keep going around different species, 100, 200, 300, 400, 1000, crossing until you come across a crocodile. The top, the top jaw moves, not the bottom jaw in the crocodile. You say, this rule may not apply to all species of animals. This is called induction. So you go around looking at all the different species and you say, okay, we've looked at, there can be a complete induction or an incomplete. Complete induction would be that if you look at all the species of the animals and then you pass a ruling. And incomplete would be that when you look at something like 100 and you say, I'll pass a ruling. I've seen 100 species and that's what it seems like. Did you follow me so far? Analogy is the weakest way. You look at a similarity between two things and you know the ruling of one and you don't know the ruling of the other. You pass the ruling of one onto the other without any reason, just because they look similar. That's why it's haram in Shia. If we don't have a ruling, then the Shia fuqaha use usulul fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence. Those principles have to be made based on Quran and Hadith and logic. And they would use those to derive all the other rulings. So if they don't find, so there'll be two methods of deriving rulings. Faqah, in usul fiqh they name them this. Okay, dalil shar'i and dalil aqli. Shar'i would be, for example, Quran and Hadith, and aqli would be, for example, not analogy. Did you understand it? Alhamdulillah. I'm trying to simplify it. If anyone got lost, forgive me.
That's great.
The other brother.
If you put your hands up, it would make it easier for him to come around the mic.
Someone had the hand.
All shy all the time.
Okay, the brother at the front as well.
No, I only wanted to ask you a factual question. Who killed Muhammad Baqir Sadr al-Mutahari? Factual, not
Okay.
Saddam.
Saddam killed Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. Mutahari was killed by a team called Mujahideen Khalq of Iran, who are named Munafiqeen. They would use a verse from the Holy Quran. You cannot force anyone for anything. You can't force anyone to stop, you can't force someone to stop a crime. So you can't make laws, for example. And they would say, because of this, because Musa Mutahari is the Chief Justice of Iran, kill him. They would just use a verse and then they would just pass a wrong ruling. You can't, la ikraha fid din, the Quran says. Surah number 2, verse number 256. There is no compulsion in religion. And he's saying anyone who sells drugs should be hanged. So, kill him. So one of his students, they had actually brainwashed him, who was studying at university, and he kept saying, Ustad, Ustad, teacher, professor, professor, he would call him professor. And in Farsi they would say Ustad to professor. He said, Ustad, Ustad, he turned around and said yes to his student, and he put the gun on his head and shot him. His own student was 19 or something like that. I think that his students were killing him. He said, because you've passed a ruling that he was the first person to give the ruling, and then everyone followed in Middle East, and then Americans also said drug dealers will be, will be killed. For example, capital punishment will be given to the drug dealers. He was the first person, and he was killed for it anyway. Go on.
Well, my question.
Yes.
My question with regards to, we've got three main ulama, is that right? In the sense we've got Imam Ali al-Sistani, Imam Khamenei, and we've got Imam Khoy. Is that correct? Or?
Khoy died in 92.
He's dead, but he still has people who Taqleed, so he will then.
People who still follow many of the people who have deceased.
Right, okay, so my question is quite simple really. If we look at the Shia sect as 20% of Muslims, so that's roughly 200 million.
300 million.
300 million, okay, even better. Is it a fact then that between the three of them, these ulama perhaps control the largest group of people on the planet? They have direct authority over
When Americans had actually done a survey to find out who are the most influential people or who are the most powerful people, I think Afghanistan was one of the top 10. I think he would probably still have more than 60% of the world's Shia population following him. Today, the living population, more than 60% of the people still following him. From life. So he has a huge following. So, and even the ones who don't follow him, for example, people in Iran, or people in other countries who don't follow him, they still respect him greatly, and if he gave a fatwa or something like that, everyone will follow him in that. In fact, even the Sunnis of Iraq say that if he gives a fatwa, we follow him. So he's one of the most influential people, according to the Americans. Top 10 most influential people in the world.
Thank you.
And questions on Taqleed. Be very open, don't be shy that, okay, this is going to sound illogical, or it's going to be simple, or it's going to be, against, or Maulana may not like it. No, I like those sort of questions that I may not like. Don't be too offensive, please. No, I'm not saying it to you. I'm saying it generally. Go on.
How do you decide which marja to follow?
To follow. Good question. Okay, there are, all the Mujtahideen have said there are 9 conditions they mentioned. You know, I'm used to reading books in Arabic and Farsi, so I usually do them in Farsi or in Arabic, and then I translate them. So I'm going to do them and I'll translate them. Mard, you should be a man. Aqil, sane, baligh, adult. Shiyat Nashri, legitimate of birth. I'm doing them and then translate them at the same time. Should be adil, just, meaning he should not say, oh, I'm the only one, I'm the odd one out. If I give this fatwa, I give you. No, he has to give the ruling that he thinks is genuine and true. He cannot just say that because everyone else has some other ruling, I'll just follow everyone. He can't. He has to give what he thinks is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has to be just. He has to be living at the time when you start the following. He has to be the most learned. Okay? These are the 8 conditions that the fuqaha say that should be found in a merger. So the most learned is the most difficult one. All the others are quite simple and should not be worldly.
So the last one you said is the most difficult. How would you
if 2 learned people, Yataba Sistani said even if 1 learned person that satisfies you, if 2 learned people or even 1 tells you that so and so is most learned, you can follow them.
Would that person have a choice who to follow? Like if he goes to 10 islands and they say, okay, I go to Sistani, then another 2 say I go to Common.
No, then if there was contradiction, then if 2 said for one and another 2 said for another, then there is contradiction. So you'll have to find out, you will refer to someone who is more learned, who will be a judge between them. Okay? Until the majority said for one person, then you can just follow those majority. If you didn't know and you thought both of them were equal, then you will have to follow 2. And take the most difficult of the 2. That is quite difficult. Yes, other questions?
I'm just thinking, I think sometimes people have this doubts about mujtahids, especially those Muslims who live in the West, in that, when they come across something in their daily lives and they don't know what the ruling is, they go to the mujtahid and then they don't like his ruling, mainly because they think that he's not experienced it in the West. He doesn't know how it is. You just explain to him the situation. He gives rule, for example, like swimming in a mixed environment, women and men, or going to the gym. So what's your opinion on that?
Did everyone hear the question? They would say that, referring to a mujtahid who hasn't experienced what we experience. So we have doubts on someone who has not. He doesn't have to drink to say that alcohol is haram. He doesn't have to go into mixed swimming pool to find out that it's haram. A doctor doesn't have to experience the illness that you have to be able to give you the cure. The mujtahideen do not have to experience what you go through. If you tell them the exact, they do not say please everyone pay attention to these 2 points. There are 2 things. One is ruling, hukm, and the other is mawdu, subject. Hukm and mawdu. Everyone paying attention? If you're lost, then stop me straight away. Ruling and subject. For example, I have this glass and I have this drink in front of me. I don't know what's inside it. It's only an example. I know it's water. I don't know what's inside it. I think it's alcohol. I know the ruling on alcohol. Alcohol is haram. But I don't know if this is alcohol or not. I don't know the subject. So this is the subject and the ruling is if it is haram or wajib or makruh or musab. So that is the ruling and the subject is this thing in front of you. So 2 things. Okay? Sometimes you know the ruling but you don't know the subject. You know that alcohol is haram but you don't know if this is alcohol. Everyone following me so far?
Yes.
Sometimes you know the subject but you don't know the ruling. You know this is alcohol but you don't know if alcohol is haram or not. Sometimes you don't know the ruling and the subject. You don't know if this is alcohol or not, and you don't know if alcohol is haram or not. In all of these 3 cases, you're forgiven. But the 4th case, you know the ruling and you know the subject. You know this is alcohol and you know alcohol is haram. If you now drink it, this is haram. Did you all get that? There is a fifth possibility, not a possibility, not a scenario. You know, you think this is alcohol, and you know that alcohol is haram. You say, let me drink this, and I'm going to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God forbid. You drink it and you find out, it's not alcohol. What happens then? Does Allah punish you or does He not? Allah has a right to punish you because you tried your best to disobey. And you didn't. Did you all get that? Now, 4 scenarios. What do the mujtahideen tell you? Do they tell you the subject or the ruling? Anyone? They tell you the ruling, they don't tell you the subject. They don't say, Mr. X, your prayer is void. He never comes and tells you that. He says, I did this, what do you think my prayer? He says, if you did this, then your prayer is void. So they tell you the ruling. They don't come and tell you specifically. They say, if you did this, then your prayer is void. You say, well, I did it. Well, he's not telling you. If you did it, you decide yourself. If you are the subject of that fatwa. Did all everyone follow me?
Yes.
So they don't say that I have not come to the West. Look, you tell me this, the whole situation because you don't know the Quran and Hadith. And if you tell me the situation, then I'll tell you according to Quran and Hadith what the ruling is. So they give you the ruling if you're not even there. The doctor doesn't have to go to India to see the patient. He says, if these are the these are the symptoms, then that person has this illness. An expert will say, yes, I can tell that these are the symptoms he has, then he has that illness. Did you follow me? So he doesn't have to come to London to witness the gym or the swimming pool. He just needs to know the situation perfectly. Here, let me tell you another thing. 2 people go to one mujtahid, explain the situation 2 different ways. The mujtahid will give 2 different rulings. How? One person says, is it, we're both buying, I'm going to give you a real example. Let's say, who shall I take an example? A person who's come with me. He has the same name as me as well. Him and myself, I and him, or yes?
I suppose.
He and I are both buying meat from the same shop. He writes to Adra Sisani, for example. I'm not Adra Sisani Muqallid. I respect him very much. The brother refers to Adra Sisani and says, Aga, can I buy meat from this shop? He says, what shop? I don't know. So he says, the person selling the meat is a Qadiani. He said, well, where is the meat stored? He said, can I buy halal meat from the Qadiani? Adra Sisani says, yes, you can buy halal. He says, you can buy halal meat from a Qadiani. I go to him, I said, Aga, can you buy meat slaughtered by a Qadiani? He says, no, you can't. Did you all get me?
Yes.
One person was already assuming that the meat is halal, some Muslim has slaughtered it, and has supplied it to the Qadiani. So he asked Adra Sisani, can I buy halal meat? Meaning the meat is already halal, supplied to the Qadiani. So Adra Sisani said, yes, it's halal. And they were thinking, there is contradiction now. This is halal. And they were thinking, there is contradiction now. So they said, there is contradiction in your fatwa. You said, you can buy halal meat from Qadiani. He said, where is the contradiction? He said, well, to another person, you said, you can't buy meat which is slaughtered by Qadiani. He said, there is no contradiction. You was telling me that the meat is halal. If you asked me that Qadiani was slaughtering it himself, then I would say it's not. Did you all follow me? This is what happens. It's how you explain the whole situation. You know the subject. If you don't know how to explain it, then you get a wrong fatwa. And many times people do that. And many times for their own convenience, they would word it such a way, it goes through transformation. You don't know, the heat has so much effect on gelatin and it's going to change the... Well, if you're telling me, you're the engineer, I don't know, you're the scientist. Do you take the responsibility if I give a fatwa? I do. Stamped on the fatwa and said, gelatin is halal because 2 witnesses have told me that gelatin goes through transformation. It changes its original state. It goes through istihala. But no one told Adla Khoi that those 2 people, those 2 scientists had big investment in a company that was investing in Dubai at the time. So Adil Khoi doesn't know that. He's not Imam Mahmoud. He is not the 12th Imam al-Islam. The Imam only sees these conniving people's the Holy Prophet sees them and the Imam sees them. Adil Khoi didn't see it. So he put the stamp and he said, halal. Because those people came as witnesses. Adil Sistani was told by a few scientists and he said, now I would need to do research. So he actually referred the whole case to bigger scientists that he trusted. He said, now you tell me, does it go through transformation or doesn't it? Now if it goes through certain heat, it goes through transformation. The scientists only decide. Adil Sistani doesn't know. He's not a scientist. He says, you tell me, does it change its original state or doesn't it? If you say it does, it's halal. If it doesn't, it's haram. Did you all get that? Is cigarette haram or halal, everyone? Is it makruh? It can't be makruh. How can you say it's makruh? Anyone? You can't say it's makruh.
I thought to start smoking is makruh.
It's not. How can you say it's makruh? No one can say it's makruh. How can you say it's makruh even to start or anything?
Depends on
even on, sorry?
Depends on the scholar.
No. No. Haram, I'm talking about makruh. I'll tell you in a minute. No one can say it's makruh. Why not? Because even for makruh you need a hadith. The hadith says, for example, the dove is makruh to eat and the pigeon is halal to eat, for example. You can't say, okay, so and so looks like a dove, I'm going to say this is makruh. You can't. When you don't have a hadith on smoking, there was no cigarettes in the time of the Holy Prophet. So there is no hadith. How can you say makruh? There are two, one ayat and one hadith. La tulqu bi'aydikum ila tahalluka. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, do not put your hands in destroying yourself. Meaning, do not kill yourself, do not destroy yourself. The hadith of the Holy Prophet, La dharar wa la dharar in Islam. You cannot harm oneself or others. You cannot harm yourself or others. The fuqaha, what do they say? They say if it is harmful, it's haram. It's haram. If it is harmful, then it's haram. And if it is not harmful, then it's halal. End of the story. You can't say makruh. You can't take any of the other rulings out of it. Okay, everyone, did everyone get that? So if it is harmful, then it is haram. If it is not harmful, then it is permissible. Who decides now? Everyone following me?
Yeah.
So the fuqaha do not say it's haram, or most of the fuqaha. Some fuqaha have now come out and they say, no, there are many open evidences from medical science that smoking is harmful. And therefore, it is haram because there are many evidences from scientific, there are many scientific proofs to say that it is harmful. Everyone, follow that so far? Okay, now.
So, one question following this, seriously, I wanted to do tobacco business and my nephew said no.
If it is harmful, then you can't.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
My question is that if knowingly I refuse to do taqleed,
all your actions are void. If knowingly you know that I have to follow an expert and you still don't follow an expert, all your actions are void. The prayers and actions, everything is void. Because of the hadith. Yes, brother.
Yeah. Just one, like you said cigarettes are wrong, most of the people say it's wrong. Then how do we get so many mullis and...
Good question. Very good question.
Everybody going for a walk.
Many of the scholars, not Umayyun, not even probably 2% of the people qualified from home smoke. But 98% of the people studied in Najaf smoked. Why? Everyone pay attention very carefully. Nasiruddin Shah, the king of Iran, before the Pahlavi family, he was a king and he had, the British had taken the monopoly of tobacco in the Middle East. So he, Adullah Marhum Mirza Hassan al-Shirazi, okay? He gave a fatwa that smoking is haram. Why? Not because they knew it was harmful then, only because the monopoly had gone in the hands of the British, okay? So he said, anyone who smokes from today onwards, he is in war against the 12th command. So Nasiruddin Shah's wife said, take out all this tobacco. Nasiruddin Shah would smoke a big pipe, like he had shisha, the hookah. He would have water underneath and the big germ and the tobacco, it was underneath and he had the palace upstairs with the pipe going all the way to his room. Early morning, he would come out. He tested it and he said, it's not, no one's prepared it. How dare they not prepare my hookah? So the person came running and said, forgive me, don't kill me. You know, they were kings, so they would just order someone to be killed straight away. He said, how dare you not? He said, the queen ordered me not to do it. He said, call the queen. How dare you not let the people prepare my hookah? He said, haven't you heard? Now, what's his name? Ayatollah Hassan Shirazi. Mirza Hassan Shirazi has given the fatwa that it's haram. He said, who is it to give the fatwa? I'm a king. He said, he is the one who's made me halal and you. If you don't follow him, I leave. He said, okay, leave the hookah. Because the king gets a bad name, you know, the queen leaves. So, the British understood that the monopoly was only and only broken by the Shia religious leadership in Najaf. In Najaf, two things were introduced by the British. Can anyone guess? Tobacco and?
I think
Alcohol was haram. Not cricket, yes. No. Tea. Okay? In Najaf, after the First World War, before the First World War, just before the First World War, you know when you went to the majlis, like you've come here, what would you get in Tabarruk?
black tea.
Two things. Tea and cigarettes. They would get big cartons of cigarettes, and they will keep throwing single cigarettes, and they will pick up and say, hey, everyone, cigarettes. During the majlis, you get cigarettes, everyone gets. Even a 12, 13-year-old boy would be smoking. And they would get tea. Small cups, even smaller than this, small cups, black tea, everyone would get tea during the majlis. The British had planted this. So everyone would smoke. Ayatollah Khoi was told by the doctor, 1992. Ayatollah Khoi was born in 1899. So in 1992 he died. How old was he? 93. Okay? So at the age of 93, a person tells him, a doctor tells him, Agha, stop smoking. He was a chain smoker. How many cigarettes did he smoke in a day? 60, 70, 80 cigarettes in a day. He would smoke and he would quickly just light the other one. So the doctor said, your chest is gone, your lungs are finished. He said, why? In 93, he said, you're smoking 60, 70 cigarettes a day. He said, but I've been smoking from the age of 13. For 80 years, they haven't harmed me. He said, you think they haven't? He said, no, they haven't. They haven't been harmful. They didn't know. It was introduced by the British and everyone in Iraq. You go to ziyarat in Iraq, everyone. This year in August we were in Iraq, and in Kazmain in the Haram of Musa Kazim alayhi salam, you go to the Zarif Sheikh Mufid, and there are cigarette packets. People are, leaving them behind. So a person, one of the, like one of you guys, a young British-born Pakistani, he said, Maulana, why do these people are leaving the cigarettes behind? So I knew straight away, I said, what do you think? He said, probably they've given up smoking. I said, no, for God's sake. They are not. This is a tabarruk for the people who are serving in the haram. Because they can't afford it, say, okay, I'm going to leave my pack for the person who opens it, he gets a free pack. Because they think, it's something positive. They don't know it's harmful. So that was introduced in the Hausa, in religious institutes. And that's why the Shia scholars, 98% of the people who qualified from Najaf, they smoked and they smoked. It was introduced by the British in the Hausa. In Qom, no one smokes. Even if you get 2%, it'll be too many. Okay? So the Najaf, Hausa, now the fuqaha, when you ask them, smoking harmful, haram or halal, they would say, if it is harmful, haram. If it is not, then it is not. Okay? Two more questions. One.
With the point that you mentioned about self-harm, what about matam and...
Good question. Okay. Harming oneself is not permissible, but many times we are allowed. How? Medical treatment. You have operations and you have treatments. Are those allowed or not? All fuqaha, every logic says it's allowed, even though you're cutting yourself and you're harming yourself. Okay, everyone? So there are exceptions in the general rules. Everyone following me? Now, the fuqaha say that Imam Hussain alayhi salam has many, many exceptions. Everyone following me? Yeah. If you're all falling asleep, then say Allah. Remember what I said? I said you're all falling asleep. Then say Allah. Thanks for telling me. Two questions for the sisters and these are the last two questions, inshallah. Now, there are exceptions. Imam Hussain al-Islam has the highest number of exceptions. Can I continue another 5-10 minutes? Imam Hussain al-Islam has many, many exceptions. For example, it is haram and forbidden to eat dust and clay. Yes, everyone? It is not permissible. Even though it is tahir, it is pure, clean, it is haram. You can't. Even from the grave of the Holy Prophet, to eat dust, haram. From the grave of Imam Ali salam, haram. From the grave of the Fatima, Imam Hassan, everyone haram. Imam Hussain is the only exception. In fact, it is known to be khaq-e-shifa, the dust which is for pure. Imam Hussain has many, many, many exceptions from all of them because of Karbala. Okay, one of them is the dust from his grave. Second exception, the dua under the qubba of Imam Hussain salam, under the dome of du'as are accepted, granted in Khana Kaaba, and Allah has it in Imam Hussain salam. Right? Many, many exceptions. Many, many exceptions. In the month in which he became Shaheed, which is Muharram, coming next month, yes? Well, in December, end of December, 18th of December, probably 1918. There is a Wiladat in every month. Even in the month of Safar, there are 2 Wiladats. At least 1 Wiladat. Of Imam Musa Kadhim al-Islam. 7th of Safar. Even though there is martyrdom of Imam Hassan and the Holy Prophet in Safar, there is still a Wiladat. Even though we don't celebrate it, we take it to Rajab, but there is Wiladat. Okay? But because Allah wanted to keep this exception with Imam Hussain. But in Muharram, there is no Wiladat. There is no Wiladat whatsoever in the month of Muharram. The month in which he became Shaheed, there is no Wiladat. And the month in which he was born, in Sha'ban, there is no Shahadat. Even in Rajab, when Imam Ali comes. Even in the month of Ramadan, every month, even in Zilhajj, every month has a Shahadat, except for Sha'ban. Because of Karbala, Allah said, "O Hussein, because of you, the month in which there is your Wiladat, there is no Shahadat. And the month where there is your Shahadat, there is no Wiladat. With your happiness, there is no sorrowness, and with your sorrowness, there is no happiness." So there are many, Imam Hussain has many exceptions. There is a whole book, 700 pages, called Khasais al-Husainiyya. Specialities of Imam Hussain Islam. So many. Now, Matam is for Imam Hussain. He is Sayyid al-Shuhada. How far can you go? The ulama have said you can go as far as hitting yourself, and even with 2 conditions. Harming yourself, yes, with 2 conditions. One, it should not cause a bad name to your faith. It should not cause a bad name. And secondly, it should not harm you so much so that it can damage an organ or can take your life or it can cause a serious damage. Anything which is regarded as a serious damage. Ayatollah Khamenei did not say it is haram on the first basis, that no, it is not permissible for Imam Hussain. And Ayatollah Khamenei said that sword is forbidden for Imam Hussain Islam. He did not say Zindil is haram, he said sword hitting the head is haram. Why? He said because it's causing a bad name. With that exception, that all the fuqaha have made, 2 exceptions they've all made. It shouldn't cause a bad name. Because people were making those as videos from Lebanon and they were promoting that, look at these people, they are killing Israelis. They do this to themselves, what do you think they will do to the Israelis? Yeah. They were taking those to the freed states of Russia, Azerbaijan and all, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, who were a lot of Shias. Azerbaijan has 60% Shias. And they were saying, if you still are Shias, this is what you will have to do. They were not practicing Shias for 70 years because of socialism. And they said, we can't do this. So then he said, okay, no, this is not, we'll have to say that this is haram. And that's why it was on the basis of causing a bad name to their faith. We have to look deep into all the rulings. Now, the 2 questions from the sister. We will have only 1 question from the brothers if there were any. Part of Islam is unity. And if different mujtahids have different rulings on a certain fiqh issue, that creates disunity. What should we do in this situation? Isn't it better to have a head mujtahid, like a leader for all? To the outside world, it makes us look like Muslims have major differences, e.g. different Eid days, Ashura days, etc. Yes. Okay. the setup of Mujtahideen is the best setup in the absence of the Imam alayhi salam. Everyone listening? You're not. The setup of the Mujtahideen is the best setup in the absence of the Imam alayhi salam. It does not replace the need for the Imam alayhi salam. Even if you go to the Fuqaha, they would say, we pray that the Imam comes. The Fuqaha do not replace the Imam alayhi salam. You will never have that perfect system until the Imam comes. That's why these differences make you do dua for the coming of the Imam alayhi salam. The Eid, the true Eid will be celebrated with the Imam alayhi salam. The true Ashura in the perfect sense will be only and only commemorated with the 12th Imam alayhi salam. He only truly understands Ashura. He only understands Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He only understands Taqleed as it is. He will take the revenge for Karbala and the prophets and the Imams, for Hazrat Musa, Isa, for Jesus, Moses, for the Holy Prophet, for everyone. For the oppression that is happening, for the tyranny that is happening. Okay, he truly understands it. La fitra wala adha ba'da Karbala. Many of the fuqaha, you know this hadith that says there is no celebration after Karbala. What does that mean? Meaning you will never have a unanimous Eid or unanimous celebration. Because of Karbala, the unity will never come until the 12th Imam takes the revenge for Karbala. Okay, everyone? So this is one of the sisters. The second, can you explain Wilayat al-Faqih and what do the Marja say about it? Is it obligatory to follow? Is it obligatory to follow this concept? Good. The Fuqaha have dispute on the rights of a Wali Faqih. Wilayat al-Faqih itself is a concept that means that the Fuqaha have Wilayat. Wilayat is what is authority. Okay, everyone? I can't just finish it very quickly. I'll have to take a few minutes. Okay. You know, different people have Wilayat over you. Okay, everyone? The father has Wilayat over the girl until, if the girl hasn't been married previously, then she cannot get married without the permission of her father or paternal grandfather. Yes, everyone? Until she is declared independent in the society, that she makes all of her decisions herself, then she can. A young girl cannot get married without the permission of her father. The father is Wali Ab. He is named, according to the fifth, Wali Ab, meaning he has Wilayat on her marriage. You have Wali Mayyit, the person who has Wilayat on the Janazah. Who is that? If it is a child, then the father. If it is a woman, then her husband. If it is an elderly person, then his oldest son. Not all sons, but one person. That's called Wali. Until you come that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Wali, Innama Waliyukumullah, the Holy Prophet, the Imam al-Islam is the Wali. Ultimate authority. In the absolute authority over us or not? The Fuqaha do have authority. Okay? Do they have absolute authority just like the Imam al-Islam? No, their authority is limited. That is what's disputed. Okay, everyone? That's what's disputed. Wilayat al-Faqih is, when he says that in the absence of the Imam al-Islam, the Faqih has the ultimate authority, even to form the government. Many of the Fuqaha say, no, that is the right of the Imam al-Islam to form the government. Or the Imam can only give the ruling of, the lashes and the killing and everything. And Imam says, no, even the Faqih, if you say that only the Imams have the right, then the Imams live from, up to the 260 Hijrah. And then 1100 years we don't have that. So what applies? No, it applies to our times as well. And he says that Wilayat al-Faqih meaning absolute authority with the Fuqaha. The other Fuqaha say no, they have the authority, they have Wali Faqih, they have the Wilayat, but their authority is limited. But the dispute is on what are his rights? Okay, what is his authority? Does he have a limited authority? And what are the limitations to it? The Fuqaha will use different ahadith, different interpretations from the Imam al-Salam and interpret it. Okay, everyone, did I clarify? Yes. Pretty much clear? So these are the disputes. For example, someone like Al-Sisani, he says that your Wali Faqih is your own Marja Taqleed. Whoever you do Taqleed of is your Wali Faqih. Wali Faqih in an Islamic state, the authority in an Islamic state is the jurist who legislates, who appoints all the leaders of Jummah, and also the judges are appointed by him. That's what's called the ultimate authority. So there is only one state, and that's why they would argue on the authority. Okay, everyone?
Maulana Sahib. We'd like to thank you on behalf of all the youth boys for the last 2 weeks of coming along and sharing your thoughts with us and your knowledge. If you could please recite the dua for us, and then after that we'll have John Locke, will have a few words. Muhammad sallallahu
I hope these 2 sessions were useful for you. I hope you benefited, and if you didn't, then may Allah forgive me for it, for wasting your time and wasting my own as well. Because my aim was to educate and to teach you and to make you benefit on the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأهلك أعداءهم إلهي بأخص صفاتك وبعز جلالك وبأعظم أسمائك وبإسمة أنبيائك وبنور أوليائك وبدم شهدائك وبمداد علمائك وبدعاء صلحائك وبمناجاة فقرائك نسألك زيادة في العلم وصحة في الجسم وطولا في العمر في طاعتك وسعة في الرزق وتوبة قبل الموت وراحة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت ونورا في القبر ونجاة من النار ودخولا في الجنة عافية من كل بلاء الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة بحق محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين صلوات
Can everyone remain seated, please?
Just check.
Please, John, would you like to come to the